Depending on your politics, the government's Royalties for Regions scheme is either the best thing to happen to country WA or it's pork barrelling raised to an art form. Nowhere is the cash gushing from the royalties pipeline more visible than in the Pilbara. Their once dusty and dilapidated towns are undergoing a massive transformation fuelled by mining royalties. And that once-in-a-generation change is occurring in a seat that the Royalties for Region architect and Nationals leader Brendan Grills is contesting at the next election. So, is the Royalties for Regions money being well spent? Claire Nichols reports.
Karatha's transforming in front of your eyes. Houses are popping up left, right and centre, new community facilities are being built, new industrial areas, expansion left, right and centre. It's a really exciting place to be right now.
The money is pouring in and the buildings are going up. And for children at this brand new family centre in Karatha, the results are worth celebrating. This $10 million building, which opened last month, included $3 million of state government funding. It's one of several new projects the council says couldn't have gone ahead without Royalties for Regions.
I think all the public are very aware of Royalties for Regions, and if they're not, they'd have to be blind.
It's been 3 years since the program, which redirects a quarter of the state's mining royalties back to regional WA, was introduced. Over that time, the Nationals say a total of $1.183 billion of new money has been invested in the bush. In the northwest, much of that has been administered under the banner of Pilbara Cities, an ambitious project that aims to grow the towns of Karatha and Port Hedland to bustling cities of 50,000 people. The money's been spent on big-ticket items like health, energy, water exploration and housing, and on more community-focused projects like this new youth centre.
Has the money been spent wisely?
Oh, there's always going to be people who say we could have spent it better, but for people here living locally, they can see some differences. You can see some real change.
The changes in the landscape are obvious, and most in Karatha seem happy with what Royalties for Regions has achieved. But further afield, others doubt that heavy spending can really address the key problems that exist in many Pilbara towns.
The sentiment behind it, I think, is absolutely wonderful. But when I look at where the limited, very limited funds that is available for really regional development right across WA, I would really have personally probably made the decision to put it into these key infrastructure projects.
Morag Lowe is a real estate agent in Port Hedland, where the going rate for a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house is $1,700 a week. She says the town is suffering from a critical housing shortage, which is pushing prices up and driving families away.
It's not as though we have housing at a price. We actually haven't got any housing, full stop. It's not the unaffordability, it's just it isn't there.
She says Royalties for Regions funding should be solely directed to the basics: land, housing, power and water. Instead, the town has this.
Come to our new centre, Claire.
The new $34 million recreation centre is an impressive new feature on the South Hedland skyline.
Being here since '73 and watching things develop, this has got to be one of the best ones that the town itself and the community will really appreciate.
Like most of the new developments, Royalties for Regions has covered part of the bill.
So $11 million from R4R, $11 million from the local government and $11 million from private enterprise. So yeah, so it's a lot of money, but it's a great facility, and you know, it'll be here for many years.
Arnold Carter has lived in Port Hedland for 50 years and sat on the council for nearly 30. He says he's concerned about the financial impost buildings like the recreation centre put back on small communities.
Once you build something, you don't get the whole lot of money you may get a third, then somebody else has got to find a third, then the town of Port Edward's got to find a third, then you go into loan programs, so therefore you put another imposition back onto your ratepayers because they've got to repay the loan. Then that's all finished. You've got this beautiful Taj Mahal there, then you open it and you find that your operating costs are about $2 million a year. Go back to Royalties for Region, which I have done, and the words I got back from the Minister was, he said, Arnold, that's your problem. In other words, no recurrent costing at all.
I think the rec centre is probably going to be a fabulous facility, but it really would be the icing on the cake. There's a lot of cake that I would like to see happen before we actually made the decision that was something that was critical for the economic and social life of this town.
The program gets talked about for the rec centres and those sorts of projects, but it actually is those key drivers of growth, which is housing, power availability, water availability. They're the things which will bring more houses to the market, and that's where the area of greatest investment is going.
While the groundwork happens in the bush, the decisions are made here. Brendan Grills is hoping the power he holds will help him win a seat in the Pilbara at the next election. And the Nationals aren't missing a chance to remind voters that Royalties for Regions is their policy.
Royalties for Regions, brought to you by the Nationals.
The slogan is effectively being put across almost everything that's going on in regional Western Australia, as though it wouldn't happen without it. And that, I think, is a sleight of hand.
Both sides of politics support Royalties for Regions, but retiring Pilbara MP, Labor's Tom Stevens, is not convinced the money is flowing to regions the way it should. He says many projects that ought to be funded by the Departments of Health, Housing and Education are simply being rebadged as Royalties for Regions.
The Royalties to Regions program, as it was pledged to the people of the Pilbara, as it was pledged to the people of regional Western Australia, was to be new money on top of existing government programs. And increasingly, this whole program is funding the core services of government to do what they should be doing anyway.
The opposition puts this all the time. It's quite interesting that after not investing anything in those areas for 8 years, then they label these investments core government investment.
Core investment or not, the new facilities are appearing on the ground in an electorate where Brendan Grills will stake his political future. Is it pork barrelling?
It's an attempt to pork barrel, and but it's sometimes the way that it's being done. It's not even doing that in a smart, intelligent way.
I think that Tom Stevens' concern is that after 30 years in Parliament, he didn't leave a footprint, and now we're seeing a complete transformation of his community. It's a Labor seat. It's always been held by Labor. Quite clearly, they think it's unusual that a government would come to their seat and actually invest some money in it. Again, I think you should judge the comments of my political opponents by the political outcome they're trying to achieve, not by the regional development outcome they're trying to achieve.
You say it's a long-held Labor seat, but it's a seat that you've now said, oh, by the way, I'd like to run for this seat and I've given you $1 billion.
Well, I'm a politician. Politicians try and win seats.
With the political war of words set to continue, the people of the Pilbara are making the most of the attention and hoping it'll last.
There's a list of $350 million that we need, and I'm sure the other Pilbara towns are in the same position as us. So we are really hopeful that it would continue under whichever government forms.
You look at this building here, and again the other areas that R4R has contributed. It's all needed, it's all required, and it's been a great help.
Claire Nichols with that report.